Welcome to your custom-tailored deep dive. We are just thrilled to have you joining us today.
Yeah, really glad you're here with us.
You know, we spend a lot of time looking at a really wide variety of subjects on this show. We do. But today we have a very specific mission. We are taking a look at a comprehensive breakdown from Wikipedia, which it also includes some incredibly detailed citations directly from the United States Constitution.
And the Congressional Research Service, too.
Right, exactly, the CRS. And the topic we are exploring today is the quorum call.
The Quorum call.
Yeah. Now, for anyone who follows legislative maneuvering or, regularly watches floor proceedings on TV, the quorum call is a familiar phrase.
Very familiar.
It's easy to write it off as just standard parliamentary plumbing, just housekeeping.
Right, just dry procedure.
But our goal for you today is to take this procedure and reveal it for what it truly is based on these sources.
Because what we found is that the Quorum call operates as a highly strategic game.
A huge game.
It's this game of time management and intense negotiation. And it is happening right out in the open on the floor of the U.S. Congress.
It really is.
You see, the mechanics of how a legislature actually functions on a minute-to-minute basis, that often dictates the flow of power much more than the sweeping speeches do.
Oh, absolutely. The speeches get the sound bites.
Exactly. But these procedural rules are the actual gears turning the machine. And the quorum call stands out as one of the most vital and, frankly, frequently misunderstood tactical levers in that entire system.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because to analyze the tactical application of a quorum call, we really have to start with the structural reality that's detailed in those Congressional Research Service citations.
Which is a huge detail.
It changes everything. Attendance at debates in most legislatures, including the U.S. Congress, is not mandatory.
Not mandatory at all.
I noticed that detail, and it immediately reframes how we should look at floor strategy. I mean, it essentially weaponizes absence.
It absolutely does.
If you are a party leader trying to control the flow of a given day, managing who is simply not in the room becomes a primary tactic.
The baseline expectation in these chambers shifts entirely when you factor in that specific rule.
Yeah.
We often operate under the assumption that the Senate or the House of Representatives functions like this continuous, fully attended symposium.
Right, like everyone is sitting at their desks listening intently to every word.
Exactly, like a college lecture or something. The source material, however, makes it very clear that because attendance is not mandatory, a quorum, which is the minimum number of members required to actually conduct business, is frequently just not present while a routine debate is ongoing.
The chambers are routinely empty.
Completely. And that is by design. It allows members to attend committee hearings or draft legislation off the floor.
Which brings us to the operational definition for our deep dive today.
Right.
If the room is mostly empty by default, the quorum call is the official mechanism used by a presiding officer to determine if enough members are actually present to legally proceed with business.
It is a sudden, formal demand for a head count.
Yeah, a sudden demand. To put this in a modern strategic context for you, consider a high-stakes corporate merger negotiation.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Right. Imagine you are at the table, things are getting heated, and one side suddenly halts everything. They demand a formal, documented audit of the legal credentialing of every single person in the room before the next clause can be discussed.
Wow.
Now, they don't actually care about the credentials.
No, of course not.
They are using a structural rule to force a tactical timeout. They need 20 minutes to figure out their counteroffer, and demanding a head count is the only legally binding way to stop the clock on the negotiation.
That framing aligns perfectly with how the CRS describes the deployment of this tool.
Yeah.
Yes, it is a sudden demand for physical presence in an ecosystem where absence is the everyday norm.
The everyday norm, exactly.
And the immediate aftermath of that demand is where the physical reality of the Capitol complex really comes into play. The sources outline a very specific chain reaction.
And the logistics of that chain reaction are fascinating.
They really are.
When a quorum is needed, literal bells are rung.
Literal bells.
The sources describe the system of bells integrated into the various congressional office buildings surrounding the Capitol.
Right, it's not just one building.
Exactly. It's a sprawling campus.
Yeah.
And these bells ring to indicate to the members that their physical presence is urgently required back in their respective chambers.
The sheer physical footprint of the Capitol complex means members might be multiple buildings away.
Right. They could be deep in a committee hearing somewhere.
Or meeting with constituents. And suddenly these bells dictate they must drop absolutely everything and traverse the campus to get to the floor.
The physical urgency created by those bells is managed entirely differently depending on which side of the Capitol you are on, though.
Yes, that is a crucial distinction. The source material outlines a massive procedural divergence between how the House handles a quorum call versus how the Senate handles it.
And it fundamentally alters the pacing of each chamber.
Let's analyze those differences, starting with the House of Representatives.
Okay.
The documentation notes that quorum calls in the House are actually fairly rare due to their specific rules of procedure.
Because they have 435 members, right?
Exactly. It would take forever.
Mm.
But when they are initiated, the House leverages technology to resolve them rapidly.
They use an electronic system.
Yes. Members use an electronic system to register their presence. It is the exact same highly efficient electronic voting card system they use to pass legislation.
So a representative just inserts their card into a station, right?
Right. They put their card in, their presence is instantly recorded on this massive electronic tally board up on the wall, and the body can move on.
It is designed for maximum efficiency.
Pure efficiency.
Now moving over to the Senate.
A completely different world.
Completely. The procedure in the Senate is stripped of all that modern efficiency.
Yes, it is.
Quorum calls are quite common in the upper chamber, and they do not utilize an electronic system for this at all.
No screens, no cards.
According to the breakdown, a clerk must literally read out a roll call of the senators.
One by one.
Name by name. The senators must verbally indicate their presence when they are called. The entire process is strictly manual.
And the manual nature of that roll call in a 100-member body feels entirely deliberate.
Oh, it has to be deliberate.
To trigger this in the Senate, the phrasing used is incredibly specific. The source states that if any senator stands up and suggests the absence of a quorum,
Suggests the absence of a quorum. I love that phrasing.
it's very polite. But when they say that, the presiding officer is legally required to direct the roll to be called.
There's no debate.
No debate at all on the suggestion. That single phrase forces the entire chamber to grind to a halt while a clerk begins methodically reading names.
The lack of debate on that trigger phrase is the crucial element here.
Absolutely.
It gives any individual senator the unilateral power to halt floor proceedings.
Just one person.
And that brings us to the core analysis of why a modernized legislature clings to a manual vocal roll call.
Right.
For practical purposes, a quorum call is not always about taking attendance at all.
Not at all. The sources are explicit that it is primarily utilized as a deliberate delaying measure.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, yes.
Because viewing the quorum call as a delay tactic changes the empty chamber from a symbol of inaction to a theater of intense, unseen negotiation.
The strategic illusion of time management is the real function here.
Senate leadership uses this intentional delay to work out political difficulties behind the scenes.
Or simply to buy time to await a specific senator's arrival to the floor before a crucial vote.
If you monitor floor proceedings, you will often see a senator suggest the absence of a quorum, and then the clerk begins reading the names at an agonizingly slow pace.
So slow. Sometimes they pause for long stretches between names.
Just dead air in the chamber.
Exactly. But during that time, tempers might be flaring in the cloakroom. Negotiations are happening in the hallways. Deals are being struck totally out of view of the cameras.
The leaders need time to finalize a legislative agreement before the formal debate resumes or a vote is cast.
But the procedural rules dictate that floor time must be constantly occupied. The quorum call satisfies the rule while freezing the action.
It is an invisible chess match.
That's a great way to put it.
The clerk reading names to a largely empty room might look like bureaucratic inefficiency to a casual observer.
It really does.
But that is exactly when the most critical legislative work is occurring. The quorum call is the designated pause button.
I want to probe deeper into how that pause button is regulated, though, because the sources highlight something called the elastic clock.
What's fascinating here is how the presiding officer manages the temporal reality of that pause.
Yes.
Officially, according to the rules in both houses, a quorum call lasts for exactly 15 minutes.
On paper, it appears to be a strict, bounded time frame. 15 minutes hard stop.
But the breakdown clarifies that it isn't a hard timer at all.
Not even close.
The actual amount of time given is entirely at the discretion of the presiding officer.
I find the structural implication of that so fascinating.
Right. What stops the opposing party from calling out the rule? If it's officially 15 minutes, How does the chair justify holding a vote open for 30 or 40 minutes?
Well, the discretion is built into the parliamentary precedents. The presiding officer holds the power to stretch that 15 minutes out to serve the strategic needs of the chamber.
Or, more accurately, the needs of the majority leadership.
Exactly. They can simply choose not to gavel the process closed until the leadership signals that the backroom negotiations are complete.
Or until the missing senator finally walks through the doors.
Right. The rule exists, but the enforcement of the timeline is highly subjective.
I mean, think about the tactical advantage of controlling that subjective timeline.
It's massive.
If you are managing a controversial bill and you know you are short 2 votes, you can trigger the quorum call. The clock officially starts, but you own the stopwatch.
You hold the floor in a state of suspended animation.
Keeping the pressure on the opposing side while your whips are in the hallway securing those final 2 commitments.
The delay isn't a waste of time. It is a highly controlled manipulation of the rules to achieve a specific legislative outcome.
Okay, but that manipulation relies on the assumption that eventually the required members will arrive, right?
Yes.
The quorum will be established and business will resume. But the procedural ecosystem has to account for the alternative.
It does.
The delay tactic can backfire if the underlying math isn't there.
We have to consider what happens when those bells ring out across the complex, the discretionary clock stretches on, and a quorum simply does not materialize.
The consequences of absence are severe if the numbers truly aren't there.
Very severe.
You cannot indefinitely suspend a session under a quorum call. At a certain point, the procedural reality forces a resolution.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the source material explains the specific cascade of events when a quorum fails.
Cascade of events. Okay, lay it out.
If an insufficient number of members present themselves after the call is initiated, the chamber cannot legally conduct its regular business.
It is paralyzed.
Completely paralyzed. At that juncture, the only regular motion in order is a motion to adjourn for lack of a quorum.
And if that motion is raised and passes,
the session is effectively shut down.
Yeah.
The legislative day ends right there.
Shutting down the session is a massive disruption.
Well, it's a disaster for the majority.
If majority leadership is trying to push through a critical, time-sensitive piece of legislation, a forced adjournment because their own members didn't answer the bells is a catastrophic failure of floor management.
A total failure. But the sources reveal a counter-mechanism to this.
They do.
The members who are present on the floor are not forced to simply concede and adjourn.
They have access to what essentially amounts to a nuclear option for attendance.
The parliamentary maneuver known as the call of the House.
The call of the House.
Yes.
The breakdown notes that if the business at hand is vital, the present members can move a call of the House instead of moving to adjourn.
And this fundamentally shifts the nature of the bells ringing in the office buildings.
It changes the summons from a procedural request to a legal mandate.
A legal mandate. It legally forces all absent members to attend the session.
Transforming a request into a mandate requires immense institutional authority.
It really does. This isn't just a harsh rule concocted by a specific Congress to punish absenteeism.
No, this power is grounded in the absolute bedrock of the country's founding documents.
The source specifically cites Article 1, Section 5, Clause 1 of the United States Constitution.
Clause 1.
Yes. This clause expressly authorizes each House of Congress to compel the attendance of absent members.
The inclusion of that specific clause in the Constitution really highlights the deep pragmatism of the framers.
It really does.
We often analyze the Constitution for its sweeping philosophical guarantees, freedom of speech, due process.
Right, the big ideas.
But Article 1 is intensely focused on the functional mechanics of running a government.
The plumbing.
The framers anticipated the exact problem of legislative paralysis. They understood human nature and the political utility of boycotts.
So they wrote the power to force lawmakers to physically show up for work directly into the highest law of the land.
The constitutional design recognizes that a legislature cannot function if the minority can veto all action simply by staying in their offices.
The call of the House is the ultimate backstop against that tactic.
It perfectly illustrates the tension inherent in legislative bodies.
The balance between an individual member's freedom to manage their own time and leverage their absence versus the collective body's constitutional duty to actually conduct the nation's business.
So what does this all mean? We started this deep dive looking at what is often dismissed as dry parliamentary procedure.
Right, just reading names from a list.
But when you synthesize the sources, the reality of non-mandatory attendance, the ringing bells, the divergent mechanics of the House and Senate,
The subjective 15-minute clock.
and the raw constitutional power to compel presence. It paints a complex picture of modern governance.
It really does.
When you see an empty chamber on a floor feed, or hear a clerk methodically reading a list of names, you are not witnessing a broken or lazy system.
You're observing a highly evolved strategic tool being deployed in real time.
To manage the clock, force intense political negotiations, and assert control over the legislative agenda.
This raises an important question for you as a listener who critically analyzes legislative maneuvers.
Yeah.
How does understanding the underlying mechanics of the quorum call change your consumption of political news?
The next time you are tracking a volatile piece of legislation and a reporter notes a delay on the Senate floor, or mentions that proceedings are held up by a quorum call, you will have the context to read between the lines.
You will recognize the invisible chess match.
You will know that party leadership is likely utilizing the presiding officer's discretionary clock to buy the exact amount of runway they need to secure a compromise or flip a vote.
The empty floor is actually a signal of intense activity happening just out of frame.
It completely recontextualizes the visual language of the Congress.
It changes everything you're looking at.
But before we wrap up our analysis today, I want to leave you with one final lingering thought based on the constitutional citations we reviewed.
Oh, this is a good one.
Something for you to mull over and explore on your own. We discussed Article 1, Section 5, Clause 1.
Right.
And how it gives the House and the Senate the power to compel the attendance of absent members.
Yes.
But the source material includes a secondary piece of that clause that we didn't fully tear down.
Who didn't?
The Constitution states that they can compel attendance in such manner and under such penalties as it may provide.
As it may provide.
I want you to really focus on that word, penalties.
Penalties.
We know the chambers can legally force lawmakers to show up when a call of the House is invoked. But what exactly would those penalties look like in practice?
That is the million-dollar question.
If a senator or a representative hears the bells ringing, knows a constitutional mandate has been issued, and simply refuses to answer the call, how far could a legislature legally go to punish their own colleague?
Are we talking about financial fines?
Censure. Could the sergeant-at-arms theoretically be dispatched to arrest a member and physically drag them to the floor to establish a quorum?
Wow.
It is a fascinating constitutional rabbit hole regarding the physical enforcement of legislative duty.
And it is a perfect starting point for your next independent deep dive.
Thank you so much for joining us on this custom-tailored deep dive. We hope this breakdown provides you with a sharper analytical lens for viewing the invisible strategies shaping floor proceedings.
Keep analyzing the mechanics, keep questioning the procedures.
And we will catch you on the next deep dive.